The studio lights blazed hotter than they had any right to on a Tuesday morning. The view's set glimmered in its usual kaleidoscope of polished gloss, soft pastel backdrops, and a table that had seen more confrontations than most courtrooms. The air inside was thick not with humidity, but with expectation. Cameras hummed in their fixed positions. Long lenses trained like the unblinking eyes of a jury. Emma Stone sat poised at the far end of the semicircular table, her posture textbook. Perfect, yet betraying an undercurrent of guardedness. She had been through press junkets, red carpet interrogations, even the chaotic post-Oscar news cycles. But this felt different. Her hands rested lightly atop each other, fingers curled just enough to keep from trembling. The faintest flicker of a smile played on her lips, the kind designed to deflect trouble before it landed. Across from her, Joy Behar leaned forward, the veteran broadcaster's body language as unmistakable as her voice, half interested, half predatory, eyes narrowing in the way of someone lining up her next question like a pool shot. The conversation had been breezy up until no film anecdotes, light banter, but the air shifted with the precision of a door locking. Joy's voice cut through the warmth of the studio. "Emma, you've been vocal about certain social issues. Lately, voting rights, Hollywood's role in politics. But some say actors should keep quiet and let politicians do the heavy lifting. Do you agree, or do you think your platform obligates you to speak out?" It was the kind of question that sounded casual to an untrained ear, but every producer, every publicist in the shadows knew it carried the weight of a landmine. Emma inhaled, buying half a second. "I think," she began slowly, "that every citizen, regardless of profession, has the right, and maybe even the responsibility, to—" She hesitated, her eyes darting not to Joy, but to the cameras. The pause was no longer than a heartbeat, yet it was enough. A murmur rippled across the audience. Joy's gaze sharpened, sensing hesitation. To what? She pressed Emma's. Smile faltered just slightly as she continued, to be informed, to engage, but also to respect differing perspectives. The words were measured, diplomatic, perhaps too diplomatic. From the corner of her vision, she caught a stage manager step forward, whispering to a producer. The executive producer's expression tightened. Joy's lips pressed into a thin line. Then, almost imperceptibly, she leaned back, crossing her arms. A red light above camera 2 flicked off. "We're going to take a quick break," the moderator's voice interjected, too brightly. The applause sign flashed, and the audience clapped in that awkward, unsure way that follows a sudden interruption. Emma's pulse thudded in her ears. Joy's eyes didn't leave her. Somewhere behind the scenes, decisions were already being made. The applause faded with the abruptness of a door slamming shut. Emma followed the stage manager's signal offset, the thud of her heels muffled by the thick black carpet that swallowed the space between the bright set and the shadowed backstage. The sudden dimness felt like a retreat, but it wasn't relief. It was the low, oxygen-thin air of uncertainty in her dressing room. She sat before the mirror, the bright bulbs haloing her reflection into something unreal. She pressed her palms together, not in prayer exactly, but in an instinctive bid to steady herself. The makeup artist hovered, unsure whether to speak. Outside the half-open door, footsteps and hushed voices skittered past like insects fleeing light. Back in the studio, Joy Behar remained in her chair, posture loose but her gaze distant. She sipped from a glass of water, her lips barely touching the rim. The other co-hosts traded quick, clipped lines meant to keep the segment alive for the cameras. But the undercurrent was obvious to anyone who had worked live broadcast producers, or buying time while senior staff decided whether this moment would be smoothed over, or escalated. From the control room came the first murmur of consequence. "Our advertisers won't like that pause," a voice said. Another countered. It was nothing, she answered. And the first voice again, sharper. It read as avoidance. People notice that. People tweet that. Emma's phone buzzed on the vanity, her publicist's name flashing in urgent red. She answered, voice barely above a whisper. They're saying you sidestepped, the publicist warned. Social media's already clipping it. You need to be ready for a second round when you're back out there. Emma swallowed, feeling the weight of each word. The pause had been instinct, not strategy, but out here, instinct was ammunition. Somewhere, a producer's voice rang out, 2 minutes to live. And just like that, she was being ushered back toward the light. Green Room wasn't green at all, just a muted mix of beige walls and gray couches that had seen years of nervous hands clutching coffee cups. Emma stepped inside, the door closing behind her with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. She dropped into the couch's corner, her posture collapsing in a way it never did on camera. The coffee table in front of her was littered with unopened bottles of water, an untouched fruit plate, and a stack of gossip magazines whose smiling covers mocked her current reality. Through the thin wall, she could hear Joy's voice carrying faintly from the set, still smooth, still in control. There was laughter now forced, but functional. Joy was a master at redirecting tension without letting the audience know they'd seen it. A junior producer slipped in, shutting the door behind him. He hovered by the table, lowering his voice. Look, people are talking. Not bad yet, but they noticed the pause. They think you hesitated because you didn't want to take a stand. Emma straightened slightly, a flicker of defensiveness in her voice. I answered the question. He nodded, almost apologetically. That's not always how it plays out online. He glanced at his phone before excusing himself, leaving the warning hanging in the air dot. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her agent. The network split, he said without greeting. Some think you were diplomatic. Others think you played it too safe. Either way, Joy's not backing off. If they put you back on the table with her, it's going to get hotter. Emma rubbed her temples. She'd walked into countless interviews prepared for the film questions, the playful jabs, but this was different. This was ideological territory. In this arena, hesitation wasn't neutral. It was political. Outside, another burst of laughter echoed from the set. It felt less like background noise and more like a verdict being read in another room. The glass-walled conference room perched above the studio floor like a glass cage, sterile and humming with the low buzz of fluorescent lights, and whispered, anxieties. Inside, the network's top brass gathered executives in crisp suits, their faces etched with calculation, flanked by legal counsel whose sharp eyes flicked between screen and script like hawks surveying prey. The footage looped silently. On the monitor, Emma Stone's hesitant words, the subtle falter in her voice, the sharp pivot of Joy Behar's gaze. Each frame was a piece of evidence, dissected with surgical precision. The lead counsel leaned forward, steepling his fingers. This hesitation, it's subtle but unmistakable. The risk is that the audience interprets this as evasiveness or disloyalty. There's potential for reputational damage, both for the network and for Ms. Stone. And remember, our advertisers are watching closely. A creative director pushed back, voice tinged with frustration. But isn't this about authenticity? Emma was trying to navigate a tightrope. If we cut her loose now, we send a message that hesitation equals punishment. That's dangerous in today's climate. A sharp nod came from the PR lead. Our social media teams are already bracing for fallout. Clips are trending with captions like Emma Stone backs down on political courage. If this escalates, we risk spiraling into a public relations nightmare. The network's senior executive, a woman with decades of experience and a reputation for ruthless pragmatism, raised a hand to silence the room. Her voice was low but commanding. We have to decide if this is a misstep we can manage, or a liability we must act on swiftly. The optics matter more than ever. Do we protect the institution or the individual? Phones buzzed. The executive's assistant whispered in her ear, passing a note with the words, "Emma Stone to meet in 10. A tense silence fell. The cameras would roll again soon, but behind these walls, the decision was already being forged. The studio. Lights blazed again, harsher this time, as Emma took her seat at the table. The hum of the audience was a low murmur of anticipation, everyone waiting to see if the morning's fissure would heal or shatter live on air-got joy. Behar sat across from her, her posture unreadable, eyes steady and guarded. The space between them felt electric, charged with a tension neither wanted to acknowledge aloud. The moderator's voice sliced through the quiet. "We want to address the earlier discussion. Emma, would you like to say something?" Emma inhaled deeply, shoulders squared. "I regret how today unfolded," she said, voice steady but threaded with vulnerability. "I've always believed in the importance of using my voice to encourage civic engagement, to support voting rights, and to stand for justice. But sometimes, in trying to be respectful of all perspectives, I may have sounded uncertain. That was never my intention." Joy's gaze softened just a fraction, though the tension in her jaw remained. "Emma, it's a tough balance, but people expect clarity, especially from public figures. Ambiguity can be taken as silence or complicity." Emma nodded, the flicker of a small, weary smile crossing her lips. "I understand that now more than ever." Behind the scenes, producers watched nervously as the cameras rolled, aware this moment could make or break the narrative dot. As the segment wrapped, the applause was polite but strained. Emma's footsteps echoed softly as she exited, glancing back briefly. Joy's expression was inscrutable, part respect, part calculation. The silence after the cameras stopped felt heavier than any spoken words. Was this reconciliation or a prelude to separation? The moment the cameras cut, the controlled calm of the studio shattered like glass. Social media erupted instantly. Clips of Emma's hesitation and Joy's piercing questions flooded timelines, igniting heated debates. Headlines screamed, "Emma Stone kicked off The View after fiery clash," while threads dissected every syllable, every glance. Emma retreated to a quiet corner backstage, phone pressed to her ear. "I'm devastated," she confessed to a close friend. "I never wanted it to come to this." Meanwhile, Joy, ever the seasoned broadcaster, remained publicly unshaken. In an interview, she remarked, "I called it like I saw it. The truth sometimes stings." The network scrambled, issuing vague statements about a mutual decision, while carefully steering clear of specifics. Advertisers grew wary, some pulling ads quietly, fearing association with controversy. The divide among viewers deepened. Was Emma a victim of political gatekeeping, or had she failed to meet the demands of outspoken activism? In this swirling storm, Emma's personal and professional reputation hung precariously. The very platform she sought to leverage for change now felt like a battleground where every word was a weapon, and every silence a sentence. Behind the scenes, the lines between loyalty and survival blurred. As the fragile world of daytime television politics revealed itself to be as ruthless as any courtroom drama. The pressure mounted behind closed doors as legal teams and PR strategists convened in urgent sessions. Emma's lawyers scrutinized every public statement, wary of potential defamation claims or breaches of contract. The network's crisis management unit crafted carefully worded responses designed to quell the growing uproar while protecting their interests. Emma, exhausted but resolute, agreed to a media strategy focused on transparency and vulnerability. She prepared to reclaim her narrative, not as a flawless hero, but as a human navigating impossible expectations. I want people to understand that standing for something isn't always easy, she told her closest advisors, her voice steady. Despite the storm, Joy, meanwhile, maintained her stance publicly, emphasizing her commitment to honesty and accountability. I don't regret speaking out, she said in a rare candid moment. Yet those close to her sensed a quiet reflection, a recognition of the cost of relentless confrontation. The public discourse intensified. Should celebrities remain apolitical, or do they have a responsibility to use their platforms for social change? Commentators weighed in, fueling debates that spilled beyond entertainment circles into the realms of politics and personal identity. Through it all, Emma's image was slowly reshaped, not as a casualty, but as a figure of complex courage. Wrestling with the price of visibility in a fractured culture, the battle lines were drawn. But the outcome was far from decided. The days leading up to Emma's highly anticipated interview were a crucible of preparation and inner turmoil. Media trainers drilled her on every possible question, refining her responses to balance honesty with strategic restraint. Legal advisors reviewed every phrase, aware that a single misstep could reopen wounds or invite new controversy. Behind the scenes, Emma grappled with a private reckoning. Was this moment a chance for redemption or a final confirmation of her professional exile? She spent hours rehearsing lines in front of mirrors, wrestling with the weight of public expectation versus personal truth. Her team debated angles, emphasized growth, admit uncertainty, or focus solely on her activism. The stakes couldn't be higher, not just for her career, but for her voice in a cultural conversation, demanding clarity and conviction. When the day arrived, cameras rolled, and the spotlight found her once more. The world watched, waiting to see if Emma Stone would reclaim her narrative or be swallowed by the controversy that had threatened to consume her. It was more than an interview. It was a test of resilience, a public trial of character in a media landscape unforgiving to hesitation. Emma took a deep breath as the studio lights settled around her, the hum of the audience fading into the background. When the host asked about the recent controversy, she spoke with a newfound clarity that resonated beyond the cameras. I've always believed in using my platform to encourage voting rights and social justice, she said, voice steady, eyes sincere. But I realize now that sometimes, in trying to respect all perspectives, I risked sounding uncertain. That was never my intention. This experience has taught me the importance of courage and clarity, even when it's difficult. Her words sparked waves of empathy across social media. Supporters praised her honesty and growth, while critics remained divided, some lauding her resolve, others questioning her earlier hesitation. Backstage, whispers circulated that Joy Behar had reached out with a message of respect. I respect your intentions, she reportedly said, signaling a possible thaw in the cold standoff. Though Emma's seat on The View remained empty, her voice had found a new platform, one of authentic influence beyond the glare of daytime television. The chapter closed on a note of poetic justice. Sometimes, true courage is measured not by uninterrupted success, but by the strength to rise after a fall. Months later, the studio set felt different. Emma Stone's chair remained conspicuously empty, a silent testament to the fallout that had reshaped the landscape of daytime television. Yet beyond the polished lights and scripted banter, a new chapter of her story was unfolding. In community centers and low-income neighborhoods, Emma lent her voice to voter registration drives, appearing not under the glare of cameras, but in the quiet determination of grassroots activism. Her commitment to social justice transcended the headlines, proving that influence extends far beyond any studio stage. Fans created tributes, online montages of her speeches, images of her rallying support, hashtags trending in solidarity. The public narrative shifted from scandal to resilience, painting her as a figure who faced institutional pressures and emerged with integrity intact. Joy Behar, now tempered by time and reflection, maintained her role on the show, but acknowledged, in a rare interview, that the clash had revealed complexities in balancing truth, activism, and media responsibility. The final scene lingered on Emma, registering voters in a modest community hall, her voice steady, her purpose clear. The moral was unambiguous. In a world of performative politics and media spectacle, genuine conviction endures. The story closed not with a dramatic victory, but with quiet, earned justice proof that courage, tempered by humility, leaves a lasting legacy. Years later, the ripple effects of that fateful morning on The View continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Emma Stone's ordeal became a case study in the fragile intersection of celebrity, activism, and media scrutiny. Documentaries analyzed the clash. Opinion pieces debated the price of political courage in entertainment. Emma's journey inspired a new generation of public figures, actors, musicians, influencers who approached their platforms with a sharper awareness of the stakes involved. Some embraced unapologetic advocacy. Others adopted a more nuanced balance, wary of the pitfalls Emma had faced. Meanwhile, daytime television shifted too. Producers introduced new guidelines on political discourse, seeking to navigate the delicate dance between genuine conversation and sensational spectacle. The clash between Emma and Joy served as a catalyst for change, forcing media outlets to confront their role in shaping public dialogue. Reflecting on the past, Emma spoke candidly in an exclusive interview. "I learned that silence isn't safety," she said, "but speaking up also requires courage and clarity. It's a lesson that's never easy, but always necessary." As the screen faded to black, the story remained a powerful reminder. In a polarized world, the fight for truth and justice is never simple, but those willing to face it leave a mark that outlasts controversy. The camera pulled back. The studio lights dimmed, and the legacy of that moment lingered unfinished, unresolved, yet undeniably profound. The years had tempered the raw edges of that televised clash, but its echo still resonated, whispering through the halls of media power and the hearts of those who watched. Emma Stone's story became less about a single moment and more about a movement, a symbol of the fragile courage required to speak truth in a world hungry for certainty. Behind the scenes, industry insiders spoke of the Emma effect, a shift in how celebrity voices were wielded and perceived. Contracts now included clauses addressing political discourse. PR teams trained clients not just to survive controversy, but to harness it. The cultural conversation had evolved, but the stakes remained as high as ever. Emma herself moved beyond titles and accolades, embracing roles that matched her convictions. Her activism took on a quieter strength, rooted in community and authenticity rather than headlines. And while she never returned to The View, her absence became a statement, testament to the price of integrity. In a final, intimate interview, Emma reflected, "It's not about never falling, it's about choosing how you rise." Sometimes the loudest victories are the ones that happen in silence, away from the cameras. The screen fades slowly, the lights dim, and the story closes not with fanfare, but with a quiet affirmation. True justice is measured not in applause, but in unwavering resolve. The legacy remains unfinished, evolving, alive. Fade to black.